Okay, now we'll see about the library. Okay, test tape library. We'll see about test tape library. So, test tape library helps us to reuse the test tapes. Um, for example, I have this open URL. So, okay, we'll take open URL. So, I have been using this open URL test tape in multiple test cases. So, if I add this, one way is I can copy and paste the test tape wherever I need that. Another way is to add that test tape to library, and from the library we can access the test tape. One advantage of using library is, so if any changes that have been made regarding the test case will be replicated when we make some changes from the library itself. We don't need to go to each and every test step and we have to make the changes when some changes have to be made. So that is one advantage of using library. So for per folder we can have only one library. So I'm creating one library. So sorry, I missed it. I'll delete this library. And so in order to create the library, we have to right click on the folder. Sorry, so we have to click on that. We have to click on that L folder. Okay, so this is the library folder. So to this folder, we can add the test cases that we are going to use in multiple test cases. So for example, if I'm adding this open URL to my library, so now I have added that open URL to my library. So you can see the test tape got converted into some reference. So this will be called as a test tape block reference. So this will be test tape reusable test tape block. So in short form, we will be call it as RTB. So reusable test tape block. All the reusable test tapes that are present in the library will be called as reusable test tape block. And this will be called as, the reference folders will be called as reusable test tape block reference, RTB reference. This is RTB and this is RTB reference. So when you are adding any test tape to the library, it will be converted. The name will be affixed with underscore reference in order to point out it as reference folder. So for I'm using this, I want to use this open URL RTB in constraint test case, for example. So that time what I can do is I can just drag and drop this open URL to my constraint. So the reference for RTB reference will be added to the test case. Or another way is using control tick. So under test case menu, we will have search and add test step method. So instead of dragging and dropping, we can search for the specific test step. For example, open URL I'm searching. So this test step block RTB also will be coming up. So we can select it from. We can drag and drop or we can use this method, search and add test step. And sometimes you may need to, okay, I'll show you with the example login, entering credential. So I'm adding that to the library. and assume you have this entering credential in different test cases. So sometimes, so normally, if you are changing value from any reference or RTB in library, the changes will be reflected in all the places. For example, I'm removing this. I'm deleting this value for remember me. I'm just pressing delete button from keyboard. So the value got deleted. So if you go and check in other reference, you can see that changes are getting reflected here. Even in the RTB in library, it will be reflected. So sometimes you may need to give different value to specific test step. So for example, in this test step, I have the same test steps in this test case and this test case, and I want to, maybe in this reference I want to verify the forgot password, and in this RTP reference I don't want to verify the forgot password. So if I'm deleting this, it will be reflected here, but I want to verify the forgot password here in this test case. So that time what we can do is we can resolve the reference. So just I right click on the reference folder and click on resolve reference. So what will happen is it will come to the normal test step. So the reference will be resolved, and if you are making some changes here, it will not affect any other RTB or RTB reference. So you can make the changes according to your requirement. So this is how we will be creating the libraries, and we will be using the reusable test step block, and we'll be resolving the reference if you want to use the different values. And in some places, what we will need while using library, um, we may need to use the test step. We may need to use the entering credential test step in multiple test cases. We may need to this test type, but we may need to give the different inputs every time for email and password. So just assume you have some project, you will be needing to log into that application with different users. With different users account, you want to log in for different processing. So that time you may need to use the same test type, but the values, the input you want to give will be different. So that time what we can use is we can use business parameters in the RTBs. We can create the business parameter in RTBs in order to give different values, but for the same test type. So we'll see that. Okay, I'll press Control Z, so it became reference folder. So for this entering credential for this RTP, I want to create the business parameter because I want to reuse the test type, but I want to give different user
Data.
email ID and password for every test type. So I've just yeah, we want to use the same test type but with different inputs in every test type. So that is, so in order to create the business parameter, I right click on the RTB. So in library we have to do that. So right click on the RTB, or you can see create object option. So that is business parameter option only. Or right click on that and the first option, create business parameter container. So this is business parameters container. So under that we can create the parameters we want to create. So for example, for remember me, forgot password login, for these test step, the test step values, the input may be same, but only for email and password we want to give the different values. So we can create the parameters for these two controls for email and password. So I'm creating the parameter for email. So right click on the business parameter container and click on the create parameter. So I've created one parameter. We can rename it as email. Email ID. And I'm creating one more parameter for password. So we have created the parameters now. We have to link the parameters to the respective tested value. So to do that, we have to delete the values. So there are two ways to link. One is directly drag and drop the parameter to the test step value. Or you can directly, okay, we have to change the data type to string here. So you can use the function PL directly. PL and okay, password. So you can use PL or you just drag and drop the parameter to the test step value. So now we created the business parameter and we have linked that to the test file. So if you go to the reference folder, it will be visible like this. So only the email ID and password will be, those parameters will be visible, and whatever value you want to give, you can give. And password, and in each reference we can give the different values. It will not affect any other reference or RTB. Other step in credentials with step values, right? Like forgot password, verifying we have this forgot password, clicking on login. So that will be same to all the references. Only this email and password will be different.
So in
You
this
can
page, right, you right clicked and you said, sorry, down the library, entering credentials,
mm,
right click. Hmm.
right click.
Hmm. Yeah, this is the entering credentials page, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, not right click.
mm,
Here, you first create the business parameters and then
yeah.
email ID and password. Then the lower
mm,
table, how did you create that PL email ID? Like, how did you create that reference? Like drag and drop or something you were saying?
yeah, drag and drop.
Okay, okay, okay.
Okay, you got it.
Mm, mm. So you first create the parameters, then you drag and drop into the entering the credentials fields.
Yes, yes. I just
Okay,
dragged and dropped. And we can use the function PL.
okay.
Mhm.
The password is input field, no? Action mode.
Yeah, that's the time. I'm not sure if it is password, it will be like this. 1 minute.
Sure.
Okay, while dragging and dropping, it's coming. Okay, when I drag and drop, this input action mode is coming. Otherwise, it is empty. Okay, I'll run this. We'll see if it is. Other things are okay. Okay, I'll run this one. I pressed F6. One minute, I'll check what is this. Press Control J. Then, yeah, you can see I've got the error. Could not find HTML document entering credential with the following property title demo.
Mm.
So I checked the demo unestablished connection to Pro. Maybe some intermittent issue, I guess. I'll run it once again. We will get error. So the thing
Mm.
is, the input action mode is popping up only for email, right? For not for password.
Mm.
So I'm just verifying if it is giving that input properly or not. Not sure why I'm getting that. I'll try once. I changed the title to demo web and I have inserted the wildcard, which means it will ignore the other text after this. Okay, I'll run it once again. Mm, Okay, I'll run from. I cannot. What would be the error? Mm, mm, along with it. Yeah, hitting error. Email documents. Okay. Uh, I in the demo. Sorry. For this, I set the browser as Edge, right? So that's why I'm getting that error. I'll remove that. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And now it will work, I guess. Yeah, here in the configuration, test configuration, I removed it. In order to remove, right click on the parameter and click on reset to default value. Okay, I'll run this now. Okay, I guess that input, it's nothing like this input thing. So this input is visible only to email ID, right? Not to the password. So it's nothing. It's no problem actually. It's working fine even if it is that input is not showing up. So um, so while I'm dragging and dropping, this input action mode is coming up. If I'm just calling this up using PL function, it's the input thing is not coming up for the parameter, so that's not issue. Okay. Okay, so this is the library. So this is how we will be using creating the libraries, and we'll be using that, and about the business parameters and all. And next we'll see about mm, okay. Okay, next we'll see about recovery scenario and cleanup scenario. So first we'll see about recovery scenario. So recovery scenario means in some cases, maybe we will be getting some intermittent issues randomly. Maybe on accessing any control, um, by clicking on any action button in your HTML page, you may get some pop-up randomly. So this is one intermittent issue. Every time you will not get that. So sometimes you may get that pop-up. Sometimes um, you may get some random error, which is not the actual issue in the application, but some random error you may get while testing. So that time, what we can do is instead. So normally, what we would do if we are getting some intermittent issue, we will just manually. If I'm getting some pop-up, random pop-up, what I would be doing, which is not in the test case, I'll be clicking on that pop-up manually. I would be doing that. So instead of that, without our manual intervene, how can we automate in order to automate that step, we can use the recovery scenario. So in the time of failure, test case failure, this recovery scenario uh, will try to make the test case pass. So it will retry the test case with different scenario. So in demo app shop, here I have one scenario to show you. So if I'm logging in and without logging out, if I'm closing the browser and if I'm try again opening the URL, you can see the page will come. The application will be logged in already.
Right. So when you try to log in, it'll fail.
It will fail. So this is one example. What we can do is for login, we can add this recovery scenario. Credentials. Okay, I'll enter gmail.com. So this for this test case, we have to create the recovery scenario. So in order to create the recovery scenario, right click on the test case, and if you click on this create option, you can see,
Yeah.
yeah, this three dot and the recovery scenario collection. So this is recovery scenario collection folder. So under that we can add the recovery scenario. So right click on the folder, and you can see this option, create recovery scenario, the plus folder. Mm, okay, I'll name it recovery scenario 1. Mm, so for normally, in order to get in order to recover this scenario manually, what we would be doing, we would be clicking on this logout button, and so that this this step uh, will be executing without any error. So that would be we will be doing manually while running the test case. URL will be opened, and clicking on login link, this will be failed because the link will not be there, because as it is already logged in, the login link will not be available. So that time we have to do something so that it will not fail. So the thing what we will be doing, we will be clicking on logout. So the test step, so the login link will be available. So the test step, this will be executing without any error. So we can add the test step as the recovery scenario. We can add as many as scenario we want to add for that. Maybe sometimes some scenario may work for that, sometimes it may not work for that. So
Correct, correct.
whatever case we want to add to that, we can log out button. Um, yeah, yesterday I sent one link, right? In the same module, it will be that test case design file you imported in your project. So one test step. Okay. Okay, we'll keep this. So we have added the recovery scenario, which is clicking on logout. And for recovery scenario, there is something called retry level. So we have option test case or test step value, which means if I'm setting the retry level as test case, in the case of failure, any failure within this test case, it will execute this recovery scenario, and after executing recovery scenario, it will retry whole test case. It will execute from open URL to entry credential. All the things it will execute. If I'm setting the retry level as test type, and I'm getting error, and I'm getting failure in clicking on login link, I'm getting the error. So it will retry from this test step. It will ignore the previous test steps. After executing recovery scenario, it will execute from the failed test step. And if I'm setting the retry level as test step value, it will read. So for example, um, I'm getting the So I have some value here in register, but in register I have some value, and in login I'm getting some error. So if I've set the retry level as tested value, it will after executing recovery scenario, it will run from the failed tested value. If it is passed, it will ignore that. It will execute from the failed tested value. If I set the recovery scenario retry level as tested value. So these are the different retry level you can set as per your requirement. And here we have one hierarchy. So for example, I have some other recovery scenario. Recovery scenario 2. Maybe I'm adding the recovery scenario, closing the browser. So I'm pressing Control T. So Control T will open the search and the add test step. So you can use this option or you can use Control T. So I'm searching for mouse browser. Title maybe demo. I'm inserting wildcard. Okay. So I have two recovery scenarios under my recovery scenarios collection folder. Um, the hierarchy will be tested value, then test type and test case. So I'm setting the retry level as test case, and for the recovery scenario 2, I have the retry level as tested value. So the hierarchy will be tested value, test test type, and then test case. So in the case of any failure, it will execute the recovery scenario 2 will be executed first, and then if it is not working, this recovery scenario is not working, and I'm getting the error again, that time recovery scenario 1 will be executed. So this is the error. In the case of recovery scenario 2 failure, the recovery scenario 1 will be executed. Mm, okay, test case, logout and test case, close browser. Okay, I'll add the open URL in recovery scenario. So what's going to happen is this recovery scenario 2 will be executed, and it will fail. I'm just closing the browser and opening the URL again. So it will retry the test step. So I have set the retry level as test step value. So it will execute from this test step, clicking on login link, and again it will get the error. So that time it has to execute the recovery scenario 1, which is the retry level as test case. There is no logout in the recovery scenario 2.
Mhm.
And one more thing, we can use this recovery scenario feature only in the execution section, not in the scratch book
Okay,
for
okay.
temporary purpose, right? So final execution only we can use this. Okay, this is this one. This is the test case. Yeah, that is the one. We are already added, right? So I'm going to execute this. So I'm closing this without logging out. Let's try in the recovery scenario too. Okay, missed on first place. Okay, for now I'll close which one. Okay, I missed some test step. That's why. Okay, first time it tried, could not find the link login. So after executing that recovery scenario, it again tried. So again it couldn't find, and then it executed. It clicked on the logout button and it exited. So what I had to do it after logout. I had to add the close add the close browser step also. So you would not add. Okay. So as I missed this test step, we got the applications opened. So Tosca got confused between two applications, two windows.
Got it.
So I clicked on it. I closed that manually. So this is recovery scenario one. So recovery scenario two didn't work. So recovery scenario one happened and other test steps got executed. So we can have many recovery scenario to any scenario based
Got
on
it.
the next button. And this is recovery scenario. And we have one more thing called cleanup scenario under this. So, the purpose of cleanup scenario is so the cleanup scenario will get executed if none of the recovery scenario is working. So we have to create the cleanup scenario in such a way that it will make a way to make for the next test case to execute without any obstacle. So that is the purpose of cleanup scenario. Um, in order to create the cleanup scenario, we have to right click on the recovery scenario collection, and you can see this cleanup icon, create cleanup scenario. And again, we can have as many cleanup scenario we want to have. So
Okay.
I've just created the cleanup scenario, or I have
Okay.
created two cleanup scenario. So here, so recovery scenario's purpose is to retry the failed test case and will try to make it pass. But
Mhm.
cleanup scenario purpose is it will try to set up the testing environment so that next test case will get executed without any obstacle. So that is the only purpose of cleanup scenario. So for example, recovery scenario one is not working, recovery scenario two is not also not working. So that time cleanup scenario will get executed.
Okay.
So after logging into application, this test case, I
Mhm.
have adding blue jeans to cart. That's the test case I have. Okay, I'll explain that with another example. Okay, I'm trying to log in into the application.
Okay.
In first test case, I'm trying to log in into the application, but I failed. The test
Mhm.
case got failed, and even the recovery scenario I created for that logging into application test case, all of them got failed. The next test case, the next test case after test steps, where it will click on the email ID. So after login, we will have some email ID here, right? Yeah, that is the next step. I want to click on that, but as this is not working, as I as the first test case didn't work properly. If I'm trying to go to the next test case, because of the first failed test case, the second test case also will affect. So in
Correct.
that time, we have to make use some test steps.
Mm.
So use some steps so that next test case will work properly.
Okay.
So that is what the cleanup scenario will do. So we have to add the test steps in order to set up the application so that next test case will work without any problem. um so this is one example I can show you from this demo app shop.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you can use it in your in any of the scenario that you would be facing in your project.
Mm-hmm.
So if none of the recovery scenarios not working, it is working. So that
Mm.
time this cleanup scenario will be executed.
Okay.
So the cleanup scenario will have the test steps that will help. Okay, you are asking like the same test step should be here in cleanup scenario, right? Maybe for this example, we have to have the same steps. Maybe for some different scenario, um, if I'm thinking of, mm, mm, mm. Okay, I'll just delete this cleanup recovery scenario one because it is working anyway. So
Oh,
I'll delete this and I'll keep this recovery scenario two in order to show that. Anyway,
okay.
it will fail, so it has to execute the cleanup scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll have only one cleanup scenario. Okay, this is the recovery scenario. Closing the browser and opening your error. So cleanup scenario. Okay, anyway, we have to log in. So the cleanup scenario will be logging out again. Log out and okay. So logging out, clicking on login link and entering credentials. I've added that as cleanup scenario. Okay, the next step, I'm adding creating one next test step. test case where we have to click on that email ID. Please read hold. Email ID. Oops. Mm. So this is the control. Yeah, this is the email ID link. So we have to click on that.
Credentials.
Here, okay, I'll show you that. So after logging in, this is the email ID. If you click on that, we can see the account details, everything. Mm, okay, I've added the two. Okay, I'll clear the previous execution. Okay, I'll execute this execution list now. I'm closing this browser without logging out and I'm executing this. Okay. And, okay, it couldn't be recovered, so cleanup scenario got executed. So in the next test case, I got some error. More than one control found for action. So I have to rescan, I guess. Okay, I'll do that. So you got the concept of using recovery scenario and cleanup scenario. Are any questions?
None, none.
Okay, the next step, I'm getting some error. I have to rescan that. Okay, I'll rescan that, and after that we can close the class for today.
Okay.
I guess almost 50% completed. Okay, I'll rescan and do this. I'll, I can show you even tomorrow. Actually, it's based on the application here.
Mm.
Mm, I'm trying to map this LI. Okay, so as I'm trying to map that, it's showing all the LI and UL items. So that's why actually we have to map with this LI, but there is no option here. So I have to scan new.